Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Foresight TV. I am talking to Deandra Sandgren with Good Sam. This is going to be a crazy fun conversation. So I'm already going to go off my script. I got this. I do all these notes and everything before I get started. I'm going to get centered there. And you have a really crazy background, bouncer, flowers. Let's talk about that before we get started. Now that impacts what you do today. Well, actually, let's talk about what you do today so we know what we're talking about here.
Sure. Well, thanks for having me today, Steve. So I'm Deandra, I'm not the chief operating officer. Oh my goodness. I am the chief nursing officer for Good Samaritan. And I kind of had a meandering way of finding my way to a nursing career before I got into nursing. I have a business degree before I went to nursing school. But I took an interesting path. Most of the time I had two jobs. And so they include things like hotel front desk. And I spent 7 years off and on as a florist. I was a bouncer in the world's largest biker bar. I've been a poker dealer, a blackjack dealer, casino hostess, gave away cars, walked around with thousands of dollars in my pocket and handed it out to slot machine players. Just lots of interesting things. I sold cars. It's been quite a ride before I landed in nursing, but it's a wonderful thing, even if you don't find your passion till your 30s, to find what you're most passionate about. And I'm truly blessed in the way that's happened. I would say there's nothing along the way in all those different jobs and careers that I've had. And I should note, like I said, I always had two. I never worked in a job less than a year. But there was something I learned at every single one of them that has helped me connect with the residents and the patients that I've served over the years. That has just always been, that is a blessing that I had that, because here's why I can connect with this person and something they know.
So I have to ask, how did you make this shift from casino biker bar to nursing? That's the one that's just like blows my mind.
Well, when I left the casino, I said, I'm never going to work in a job where I have to work nights, holidays, or weekends ever again. And then I became a nurse. So that went out the window. But I was working selling cars, and then had gone back to school and was getting a business degree. And my grandmother got sick. She'd fallen, she'd broken a hip, and she was having some issues, and she was at the local hospital. And I didn't feel I could leave because the day shift nurse was great, but the gal that was there on the night shift left a lot to be desired. And I don't know if she was having a bad day, but I slept for 2 nights in a row in the world's most uncomfortable hospital chairs because I didn't feel like I could leave, because I didn't know what would happen. And that was a terrible feeling. And I went home and I told my husband, I said, I don't want anybody to ever have to do that. I think I need to become a nurse. And he said, okay. And I said, gosh, but I'm 31 and it'll take 2 years to get it done. He said, yeah, well, you'll be 33 anyway. So why don't you just go do that? And it was so supportive, and talked to my grandparents. I said, I'm going to have to move across the state to do this for a year. Will you keep an eye on my kids and my husband while I'm away? And they're like, yeah, all in. And so I just was inspired by a couple of really great nurses, and probably even more inspired by a couple of really not good ones, and just didn't want anybody, at least while I was on shift, nobody would ever need to worry about sleeping in an uncomfortable chair because their loved one wasn't taken care of.
Yeah, and I will tell you that that's still true. We've kind of got a family rule that if somebody's really critical in the hospital, we do the same thing today. And we've got really good hospitals, but nurses are too busy and things happen. So, but I have to tell you, I'm so excited about this story. I can hardly wait to share this with my son-in-law. So he and my daughter and their 2 kids are living with us right now, because at 41, he's back going to nursing school right now.
I love it. That's awesome.
Yeah, he's right now as we speak. He's almost done, probably. He's almost ready to get off, but he's at clinicals right now in a nursing home. He is loving it. So that's very exciting.
That's fun. I think people are never too old to find their passion, and the time's going to pass. You might as well go back to school and find something that gives you purpose. And nursing is such a meaningful career. I'm glad I found it when I did, but sometimes I wish I'd have found it sooner.
Got it. I understand. Okay, so let me kind of go back to the first question I typically ask guests. What is the thing you're really passionate about? How are you changing the world, making it a better place?
Oh, goodness. How much time do we have for this conversation, Steve?
Oh, I know. It's always, sometimes there are interviews where just we don't have enough time.
I think what I'm most passionate about is making sure people have a path to being more than they thought they could be. And for our caregivers and our nurses, I would say for our nurses, that's expanding into new skill sets, growing a leadership and growing in leadership for people that never thought they'd be anything but a floor nurse. I want to help our CNAs grow. If they want to be a career CNA, I love that. That is honorable. But if they want to become a nurse or move into being a nurse practitioner, a PA, or I've even got a couple of doctors to my names that I've written recommendation letters for, that's what I'm passionate about. And the best thing about this job is that doesn't just stop for me with the staff and the team members that work for us. I get to do that and help encourage people to do that for the folks that live with us. You know, just because you've moved into a senior living center and you always hosted the Thanksgiving dinner doesn't mean you can't be the hostess with the mostest and help welcome people to the new community. I don't want anybody to ever think they can't be something just a little bit more, give something back. And so that's probably what I'm most passionate about.
Oh, man, I love this so much. So let's talk a little bit about your organization. I should do that before we finish setting a foundation.
Sure. So Good Samaritan is a part of the Sanford Health interconnected system. And so our Good Sam footprint sits in 7 states. We have over 150 buildings, and we serve in home health, hospice, assisted living, senior living, independent living, long-term care. We've even got a couple of daycares. So we take care of people across all phases of life. And then, of course, being part of Sanford Health is a largest hospital system here in the Midwest.
That's terrific. Okay, so I want to dig into leadership. It's my number one passion. I've got a brand new keynote I'm working on right now that is completely focused on how to create cultures where people love coming to work every day. I took a look at the very best cultures, and there are 7 or 8 things that are all, they're hard collectively to do because you got to do them over and over again every day, but they're actually very simple things to do. And I have a theory that's not very popular, and that's that senior living actually does not have a staffing crisis. Ooh. I believe we have a culture crisis. And so I wanted to have you just respond to that and talk to me about your leadership philosophy and what you're doing. I mean, you got some cool things. You got the safe culture. You got this DNS program. You're using technology. So I'm going to let you go, and then we'll just have a conversation.
Okay. We do a lot of cool things. I think it depends on where you are, whether or not there's a staffing crisis and a staffing challenge. But I do think there's a leadership challenge in a lot of places, in that people sometimes get so bogged down into the details and the minutia of what they have to do. Sometimes they forget to lift people up. And so for me, my leadership style really comes into more of a situational leadership. What I tell the clinical directors and the folks that work for me and our consultants supporting the field is we have to take care of our buildings and our leaders the same way we take care of our residents. And that's person-centered care. So your leadership, in my opinion, needs to be person-centered leadership. What I'm doing to support one person is not the same as how I'm supporting another. And that translates from all of the different buildings and through our different service lines. When we came out of COVID, I mean, that rocked our world, that rocked everybody's world. It's still rocking our world a little bit in the long-term care sector, but we were seeing burnout at completely unprecedented rates in our leadership. And when people don't feel taken care of as leaders, they can't take care of other people. Quality suffers. Quality needs consistent leadership. The best quality, the best outcomes come from consistent things you do every single day. And we took a look at our DNS onboarding program, and it left a lot to be desired. It was 16 weeks long. It was trying to throw everything someone would need to know to be a director of nursing at them, all while they're still trying to figure out how to run their building. And that was through COVID. And endless surveys and lockdowns, and it just didn't seem a fair way to set people up. And as the team and I looked at it, we thought, we're not really setting people up for success. So what could we do different? So when I challenged the team with it, and they were trying to rebuild and make what they had, and I was like, can you just throw that out and build something better? And they were so excited because you could see that they had wanted to tell me that it was terrible. Well, I didn't invent that one anyway. They could have tossed it out originally, but that's probably what makes some of the biggest difference with these changes that we'll talk about that we've put in place is I just told them to run with it. Here's my idea. Here's where I'd like you to end up. Get me there the best way possible. And I think as a leader, that's one of the things that I try to do is I like to present ideas and then I tell people to make it better. And if you can admit that you're not the smartest at everything, man, people respond, our staff respond. I love going into buildings and asking frontline CNAs for solutions about a problem we have, because they always have the best ideas. But sorry, I'm going off on a tangent.
No, this is really good. So keep going.
With the DNS program, so we shorten that down, and it's a core 4 weeks where you are in it, and we try to keep a second person. And that means I have to bring in an agency DNS to help support the building while my permanent one is getting trained. We do that. It's worth that investment to make sure that the new DNS has time to just focus in on their job, get their onlines done, find out where the bathroom is, for goodness sake. I mean, there's so much that gets thrown at you when you walk into to being a DNS. We just wanted to really bubble wrap them as we started, care for them in that first 4 weeks. They're dedicated, they get a dedicated mentor. And then after that 4-week session, they're in the job, and there's virtual touch points every week with a different subject matter expert. So they're meeting all these consultants and people that have the answers to the questions that they don't even know they have yet. Once they get through that and they've been in the position about 6 months, we bring them into our corporate office here, National Campus in Sioux Falls, for a 1-week intensive with other folks that are new into that DNS role. And they're here, they get to meet most of our nursing consultants, most of our subject matter experts, the finance team. The old program, they were talking about the business of healthcare and finance in the first 2 weeks. And that is important for DNS to know, but it's not the second week. The second week now, we talk about quality and how we get great patient outcomes. We don't even introduce finances until the 6-month time point. That way they're focused in on the patients. That's what's most important.
So I'm thinking it must be a terrible job. I've actually really only had one significant interaction with, maybe I guess I've had two with different family members. One was my mom, the other was an uncle, and they were both grossly unpleasant because the quality of care was terrible. In one case, I got into a shouting match. I think it was actually the ADON in this particular case, where they were trying to do an unsafe discharge. And we went around and around until I finally said, okay, I give up. Show me where the poster is that has got the Ombudsman Pro number, and we're going to get them involved. And it became very different. So how do you shift? So I think that this person, I'm looking at that and I'm thinking, they were, in both cases, I was right and they were wrong. I don't have any hesitation of saying that. But I'm thinking if they'd been trained to be better leaders, that kind of stuff would have never happened. We would have figured stuff out. And so how do you get people to the point where it doesn't just become this sort of enforcer adversarial, and it actually becomes a fun job?
Yeah. I'm sorry to hear that was your experience, Steve. I would say I was a DNS for 5.5 years. It was the best job I ever had.
Really?
I worked with an amazing team. I assembled an amazing team. And I think what made the biggest difference is we presented our whole team in a way that we didn't wait for problems to come to us. And I try to model that now in my role as CNO. My best day in the office is not in the office. I want to be out in the field, talking to people, hearing what's going on. And we try to train the same things with both our directors of nursing and our administrators, and both our senior living and long-term care. Because if you're sitting in an office waiting for problems and concerns to come to you, you're doing it wrong. If you're out there finding out what's going on, talking to people early, you can alleviate a lot of those concerns. So like for like the situation you brought up, we have a structured process for folks that are on a skilled Medicare stay, where we have weekly touch points and conversations where they're meeting with either the therapy and the nursing rehab director or the therapist and the social worker. So when you come in, we're talking early. We think this is going to be an 8-day stay or a 20-day stay or a 30-day stay, whatever that is, with weekly updates or more frequently if the family and the resident needs it, so that all along the way people are informed. Not only is that good for the resident that's there and good for their family, but we want people to be able to prepare. But for our staff to know, if family's only visiting on the weekend nurse might have no idea what happened in therapy, but it's in the notes because we called the family, we talked about it, and everybody's on the same page on Thursday, when they had that meeting on Thursday or whichever day of the week it is for that building. But the key difference there, I'll just say it again because it's worth repeating, is being proactive. And I think when we've established leaders that are going out and rounding on a regular basis, we call them angel rounds in Good Sam. So that's one of the things we teach in our DNS process and it's not just for the director of nursing. Every department head gets a list of 4 or 5 people that they have to check on every week. And then we switch them up and we're looking at the condition of your room, maybe it's a ceiling tile or a light that's blinking that you haven't had a chance to tell somebody about. Well, that could be annoying. And in some cases could trigger a seizure. So somebody's peeking in there besides, I would say all of our staff are very attentive, but you see the same thing over and over again. You might walk by it. So we just have somebody else walk by to ask a question. How's it going? Dedicated time for someone to sit in with a resident or their family. Just say, anything going on? Anything I can do to make the day better? A lot of times I hear it's the French fries could be hotter, but sometimes there's real concerns there. And I do take my French fries pretty seriously, but we just want to get ahead of those things so it doesn't wind up in a shouting match. Unfortunately, I've been on the receiving end a few of those too. And in those cases, a lot of times we try to encourage with our safe culture that we encourage people to speak up early and often. But one of the key parts of safe culture is listening with empathy. And I found that when a family member comes at me really hot and they're upset about something, oftentimes, and that may not have been your case, but it may not be the exact situation of what was going on with their loved one. Sometimes it's that loss of control. Sometimes it's that changing. And, my wife, who I've cared for 50 years, I can't bear the idea of leaving her in the nursing home. Nobody's ever going to take care of her as good as me. And family needs us to care for them just as much as that loved one does to help them through the transition. But you can't find those things when you're sitting in an office as a leader. You have to go out and meet people where they are.
Well, I will tell you that. So I'm a mom passed away in senior living. My stepfather has dementia. He's in senior living right now, and and he's in a really good place. I love the people who are taking care of him. I love the staff. I love the ownership. We have a great relationship. But I will tell you, and I've written about this, and my audience knows this. I've been in tears or on the verge of tears because I don't know what to do. And one of the things that I have discovered is, and even this is true with even really, really good senior living organizations, they do a terrible job taking care of families. They just don't spend enough time on the families, and it makes no sense. I took my stepfather home. We brought him home for Thanksgiving. Turned out it was a big mistake, and it was huge trauma taking him back to the community. He felt like he was being abandoned all over again. We didn't do it at Christmas. It was a horrible experience. Well, nobody's fault except maybe mine, because I made the decision to bring him home.
Sure.
And I was just like, I don't know what to do. And I think that we've got to pay more attention to the families. I'm the guy who writes the check. I'm the guy who you've got to make happen. He didn't remember the terrible trauma that happened, and thanks on Friday morning. He didn't remember the trauma from Thursday evening at all. I still live with it, 10 months later. So
I agree with you. There's a lot we can do to prepare families for those conversations. My personal feeling is that sometimes we try to sugarcoat things and say it's not going to be that bad. Yeah. And just with leadership, with any of that, if you tell people what to expect, it's going to be awful and it's going to hurt. and you're going to feel guilty about that. But we're going to call you and update you every day or every other day or whatever makes the most sense for you. And can you bring in something that's familiar to your loved one? There's some really great programs that we're looking into with AI, and there's some things on the market for solutions that, you can use AI to tell me a story about your loved one's life, and it'll put it into a booklet and tell the story of this person's life so that the staff know. One of the saddest things to me is when we read an obituary and find out that someone, lived this amazing life. But when they came to us, they had dementia. We couldn't remember, we didn't know what to talk to them about. I remember a resident, he couldn't speak well and we struggled. And then come to find out he was a fighter pilot in World War II. When you walked in and talked about planes, everything changed. And once staff realized that, it made a huge difference. So I think we can all do a better job of incorporating those kind of conversations early into the admission process, but also just what you're doing here. I hope this reaches other people that might be looking for care and can use this as a resource through Foresight TV and realize, what questions should I be asking? What should I be telling people to just make that transition a little bit easier on their loved ones?
Yeah.
I was going to add for our team, one of the other things that we did is about 6 months ago, we had an opening on our team. Someone transferred into an internal role, and I had this FTE, and I wasn't sure what I was going to do with it. And so we started asking teams what they needed. And what they told me over and over, and it wasn't surprising, is they wanted better support for behavioral health and memory care programming. So we actually created a whole new role to be our director of memory care programming and behavioral health, specifically to help encourage all these great ideas that we have. I need somebody to go out and launch them, get those things ready to go. They'll be traveling, visiting locations, doing dementia care training, talking with people about substance abuse, just really meeting our locations exactly where they're at, can have one-on-one conversations with family, and we're really excited about that. So the other thing that we're doing a little bit differently, and I don't know if this apply for you in California, but as an organization, we've really dialed into a lot of the rural health transformation grants that are out there. Mm-hmm. And one of the things here in South Dakota that they're offering is, how do you do better community support? So even though we might not be moving somebody in, we have grants in place that can we be training locations to be able to host trainings in dementia care? Can we set up and have in our locations, open our doors to be able to have where our chaplains come in and lead these community support groups? So when families are moving folks in for the first time, they have somebody to talk about who's been through that before. Because for us, it's just another day. We do this all day that we admit people, but it's easy to forget sometimes that the person on the other end of the table, it's their first time. And like I mentioned before, that's our safe culture. We listen with empathy and really want to take the time to understand where people are at.
Yeah, I want to dig a little bit more into the safe culture thing. And, I think about the struggles I've had, and I'm somebody, most people would sort of say, well, I'm kind of an expert on the industry, right? And it's been really tough. I've got a lot of resources. There are people I can call all across the country and say, hey, what do you think about this? How can I deal with that? And I've used that a lot. And but it's confusing and it's awful and it's hard. And I think, as you said, we need to talk about the realities of how difficult it is, because mostly we're talking about choosing between lesser evil choices. They're not like great, we're going to do this thing and it's all going to get better, because we're dealing with people in their last weeks, months, years. So, So I want to talk a little bit more about your safe culture. I think Jada, who's producing in the back, is probably going to start shaking her head like crazy. But I think we have a pretty safe organization. And yet I know that if I call up Jada or one of the other people on my team and I say, hey, Jada, I got something that I want to talk to you about, there's this emotional reaction of, I'm in trouble, even if it's not in trouble at all. And there's just a natural employee. And now that I sold the company, I have a great relationship with Brett, who founded the company. But when he calls me up and he says, hey, can you give me a call? It's like, And so I'd love to hear what you're doing to make that better.
Sure. So with SAFE, that stands for Sanford Accountability for Excellence. In practice, what it really is setting not only the expectation, but are empowering everybody in our in our organization to speak up for safety and to do the right thing, no matter the circumstances. So what that looks like, what you're describing there, power distance, that's real. But one of the things I love most is when I'm touring a building, I make it a point to find somebody that's waiting for a second person to help them with a lift, and I go in and help, and it never fails. That usually that CNA won't know what my job is, and somebody like, "Oh my God, the chief nursing officer helped you. Did that go okay?" And they'll be, oh, "She was just a normal gal," and we talk through that. And so we work really hard on reducing power distance. Anyone can bring a question forward. We have multiple areas to the organization where you can submit questions, concerns, suggestions, all the way up to the highest levels of our organization and get a response back. By doing that, we also use frames like, hey, we would say, like, if I needed to call somebody in the front lines, be like, hey, I just want to validate and verify something with you. You're not, just kind of using that language, that shared language, or the other one, I have a clarifying question. Instead of, I have a question. It just, when you say clarifying question, it just makes it a little bit different. I'm not questioning you. I'm questioning the way the information came through. So I make sure I have it right. That is huge. And we train this all the way from the front line. Leaders get like a 6-hour intensive training in how this works, and from your relationship skills to your leadership skills. But my favorite part about it is the buddy check. Because as a leader, I'm not always right, and I don't actually have all the answers. I'd like people to think I do, but that's not the truth. So quite often I'll just say, can I get a buddy check on that? Or can someone fact check me? And that makes it a safe space, a psychologically safe place for people on my team to say, actually, there was an update to that and it changed. And then it's, oh, thanks, because we can't be expected to know everything. And when we can talk and create that psychologically safe space, we start that from the top down, but it builds up where a CNA or a dietary aide can walk in and say, something just didn't seem right with Bob today. Can somebody come take a look? And you don't feel like you're interrupting because they just want to double check, or, hey, I just want to validate and verify this is what's written on this dietary order, but I know he's diabetic. Are we sure we should give this? It makes such a difference when people feel empowered and expected to speak up to do the right thing. It's been a great addition to our culture.
I love that so much. I sort of lurk in a couple of CNA groups on Facebook, and the things that some of them post about the way they're treated just is, honestly, it's just heartbreaking. And the talk about hostile work environments. So this kind of environment is just amazing. So I've only got a couple minutes left, and one of the things I know I want to do with you is I want you to tell me some stories about how you, as a leader, your organization, as an organization, has changed the lives of other human beings. It could be family members, it could be residents, it could be team members.
Sure. My favorite one for me, a lesson I learned early on is not everybody's had the same life experience I have. And I had a CNA, and she was great. And I wanted her to become a med aide, and I kept pestering her about this. And finally she came in and she said, would you stop asking? Because I didn't graduate high school and I don't have a GED, so I can't become a med aide. And she didn't want to get a GED. She wanted a diploma. It was on her goal of things to do, but it was cost prohibitive. And I'd been thinking about it, building a mentor program for a while. And so within 2 weeks, we stood up a mentor program, and she was one of our mentors. And it was a 50-cent an hour raise was the difference that it made for her to be able to go back to school and get her high school diploma. A year later, she graduated from high school. And so there were 6 people in that mentor program, and we had a wonderful retention rate for about that was the last 2.5 years that I was at DNS. What a wonderful retention rate. But it was because people knew that we were going to find what their strengths were, find out what they were passionate about, and help put them in charge of those things. I think at Good Sam and Sanford, we do that well anyway. I continue to do that with my team, and I've had people do that for me in the organization. We do a really great job of recognizing where people's strengths are and what they're passionate about, putting them in charge of those things and letting them do great things for folks. It's actually part of our strategy. We're be the good, do the good. And that's, if people are out there and CNAs and are thinking, man, I wish I could work somewhere, well, we'll get you the ad. We are hiring here in the Midwest. Would love for you to come to this area if you're looking for a great place to work for.
Yeah. So I have this dream, and it sounds like maybe you're there, maybe you're close to it. So if you're in Silicon Valley and you're an engineer, a software hardware engineer, and you could pick any company in the whole Silicon Valley you wanted to work for, you'd almost probably 95% of the people there would pick NVIDIA because the pay is good. They're working on really interesting, amazing things. And I keep thinking it should be possible for a senior living organization to be that place where you go out and you wander around, you talk to any CNA in a marketplace, you talk to any executive director in a marketplace, you talk to anybody who's in corporate leave, and you say, if there's any company you could work for, who would it be? And that's the kind of company I'm dreaming for, is that's out there, that everybody said, I want to work for Good Sam.
Yeah.
So you there?
We do. And well, interesting. I went to engineering school for 2.5 years too. Engineering wasn't for me though, but funny that you mentioned engineering. It is. We have a great location in Austin, Minnesota, which we help with scholarships. We have 4 CNAs there that are just getting ready to finish with their registered nursing degree. And most people get a nursing degree and they think, oh, I'll go work in a hospital, I'll work in ICU. That sounds a lot sexier than long-term care. Those 4 folks know what a great place we are to work for. They're going to finish their degrees and come back and work for us as nurses. So I think that says a lot about our teams. I have lots of stories of folks that have left Good Sam over the years, and then they'll call 6 months, maybe it's a little bit longer, and they're like, can I come home now? Because they miss it. It's an atmosphere where you can be who you are, where you can truly care for people. And when, like I said, we are expected and empowered to do the right thing for people, makes a huge difference. And it's why people keep coming back to Good Sam.
That is terrific. We are out of time. I have so many more things I want to ask you about. I'm particularly interested in, I think we may have to do this again, about your mentoring program. I will just start by saying that I hear lots of people talking about mentoring. Almost never do I ever hear anybody talk about how it actually works and so I'm very, very excited about having that as another conversation. But we're done for today. And Jada, thank you so much for producing in the background. Where do people find you, learn more about your organization, come to work for you?
Yes, you can check us out at www.good-sam.com/careers or at sanfordhealth.org/careers. You can find me on LinkedIn, Deandra Sandgren. Just Google me. And Steve, I so appreciate this and appreciate what Foresight TV is doing. Thanks so much for having me join you today.
It has been a great conversation. Thanks.